with some, not all, of our elected officials. And I'd like to introduce Mayor Dunne from Portsmouth, who's been deeply involved in our work. In fact, spent 5 days paddling with us from Portsmouth to Covington. Let's give a big round of applause to Dunne. All right.
We get everybody out. We have are we going to sit here and have a discussion?
And people can stand up while they talk with the mic so it projects.
Okay, there you go. Okay, as everyone's walking up here, hello everybody, I'm Sean, as Bruce was saying, from Portsmouth, Ohio. And I went along for the first time ever on the Ohio River this last summer. It was great. I went from Portsmouth to Covington, and it was my first time on the river. I'm not originally from this area. I'm from God's country in New Jersey, and it's been an interesting way of learning about the region. When I previously was trying to learn about the general context of the region, I would drive through rivers along the river trail from Pittsburgh down to Portsmouth, and it gave me a better understanding of Portsmouth as a river city. And then when I did the paddling trip, it expanded greatly my appreciation of the river, my appreciation of the region, and my overall understanding of it. So I thought what I would do for this panel is that for the first 10 minutes or so, each of us, or 10 or 15 minutes, we'll each talk about our cities, just give some general background, and then we'll talk about just 3 general themes on how we can collaborate to develop this region. I'll kick it off really quickly. I would describe Portsmouth as a space that is transitioning from the 20th century to the 21st century at quite a rapid pace. A former manufacturing city, like many cities along the river and throughout Ohio. We're now looking at transforming spaces out of just an exclusively manufacturing city into a city with more diverse activities. It has a very rich history, extremely strong community involvement, and it's been very welcoming to me. Like I said, I was from the East Coast. I was born in the Bronx. I grew up in New Jersey, and here I am as mayor. And so for those that think it's a region that looks closed-mindedly at outsiders or whatever, I'm proof that that's simply not true. It's been a great experience. I've been on council since 2018, and I'm also happy to work at Shawnee State University, which is another great asset of our city. And so Portsmouth is located about 2 hours south of Columbus. We are right on the Ohio River. I can see the Ohio River from my kitchen. I live in the same house that Robert Debra lived in when he did our great murals along the flood wall in Portsmouth. And so I can walk to work. I just love it as a city. It's a great place to live. So that's Portsmouth. I might pass to Mayor Meyer in Covington next to talk about Covington.
Hey, thanks, Mayor. It's really a pleasure to be here this morning, and let me say I'm impressed by the crowd and the turnout and the interest in this topic. Once you grew up unlike Sean, I was born in Covington. I grew up in Covington. I still live in Covington. I live 7 blocks from the house that my parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents owned. So, I haven't moved very much. But when you grow up in that environment, you just get accustomed to what you're accustomed to. And therefore, the uniqueness and the specialness of the river isn't something that really strikes you until you take a step back and look at what we have. Covington is one of our old river cities, not as old as Maysville, but still well over 200 years old. And it too was an industrial town, and it too went through massive periods of declines, starting in the 50s and 60s, accelerating in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and aughts. And we're at a period now where the declines of the past are being offset by the reinvestments in the future. We have seen our population grow for the first time in the last 60 years. We are seeing the reinvestment in our community off the charts, Rick. Property values in Covington went up, taxable property values in Covington went up 30% year over year, which is just a remarkable indication of investment. The population turnover is phenomenal. In the last 5 years, the population in Covington with a bachelor's degree or more has grown by 40%. And Covington now exceeds the Kentucky average percentage of the population with a bachelor's degree or more, which is just a huge change from the past. And our poverty rate has dropped 18%. It's still high. It's in the low 20s, but not nearly as high as it was. And the trajectory is all very positive. When it comes to the river, I can say we're not connected to it. As a matter of fact, we have a flood wall that blocks all of our access to the river except for one block. And that's on Riverside Drive in Covington. So we've been working to reestablish that connection to the river in a number of ways that we'll talk about, in particular when we're dealing with regional collaboration and cooperative efforts to make the Ohio River more of a recreation way. So I'll be glad later to answer any questions about Covington. It's a fascinating city with a lot of history. And I will take a moment for this. We talked about the Bourbon Trail, right? Covington is the unwritten star of the Bourbon Trail because we had a fellow named John Griffin Carlisle, who was Secretary of the Treasury for the United States. He was also Speaker of the House, U.S. Senator, and whatnot. His principal accomplishment was the Bottled in Bond Act, which laid the framework for the success of the bourbon industry throughout the country. So the political framework and the legal framework for Covington was born out of the Covington.
Good morning. Maysville is a very vibrant, historic, charming city. We are small. We are just under 9,000 in population, but we are a market center for 5 Kentucky counties and 2 Ohio counties. We do have 2 bridges, one very historic and a cable stayed bridge that's fairly new that I watched them build from both sides of the river, and it met in the middle. It amazed me. Great engineers. One of the things that we've been noticing is a huge increase in interest in economic development. We have a lot of site visits in Maysville, but the thing that amazes me is that one of their main priorities is the quality of life there. That seems to be the most attractive. And tourism department plays a big role in our site visits, sharing the history of the city, and of course, the education things they know, but just the quality of life makes a difference. And that's what the Ohio River and these cities, I think, have to offer. We also have a flood wall and levee. The 1937 flood really affected our city. It was in the 2nd floor of my in-laws' house and most of the town. And so for many years, all the folks there saw was protection, and they didn't think about using the river. And only in the last few years has that become an issue that is being addressed. And so hopefully these things will help move us faster, and I'll have some good things to share a little bit about some funding that we have received to work on our riverfronts.
Yeah. Mayor Mark Drury from Aurora. I'm just honored to be here in the room with all you people because there's enough brain power in the room to move the world, and that's what we should be doing. And with the collaborative effort, you know, sharing the ideas, the festivals, the different activities that we have to share in our communities. She talks small. We're under 4,000 people, but what an exciting historic little town Aurora is. We have what I call a cozy downtown area because our buildings and our streets are so close together that you can easily walk from place to place. We've got bed and breakfasts on the horizon, unlike a lot of the other things. And I'm going to steal a phrase that I heard at one of these meetings earlier. You know, we often go visit the river, and sometimes it comes and visits us because we have no flood wall. We have an unobstructed view of the entire riverfront. We have a beautiful Lesko Park that just runs down the entire length of Aurora's riverfront. We're fortunate and blessed that we have a connection with a bicycle trail with our sister city here, Lawrenceburg, that you can get on a bicycle, rent one here or there, and ride in between the two cities. We're looking to expand that even further. But I think there's a lot of opportunity here for all of us to share the ideas, the events that we have, and come together as a larger group to promote this area. It's like those individual matchsticks, and we bring them together and we build a bonfire that's going to be seen from space. We are going to become a destination for the world. We have a lot to offer. I look out here and I see an interstate highway that I don't have to pave. I see a park that I don't have to mow the grass with. I see all the natural things that can be brought from this river. And in my lifetime, you know, you're old, you see things change, and I see improvement. When I see some of these numbers and stuff of the toxins and things in the river, but I've seen it improve from the times in the 70s when I could smell the oil and the smoke in the water. So we're getting better, but we've got a long way to go. And as we join together with things like that, we will achieve those goals. So thank you for being here today. All right.
Yeah. You guys, if we're going to change this riverway, we've got to be louder than that.
It's Pamela Stevenson, and I'm a Kentucky State Rep representing parts of Louisville. And I wanted to be here today. I wanted to be here because up and down the river, there are cities and people that want to make a difference. This is what it takes to collaborate and not fight all the time. And you know I'm used to fighting. We rap in a minute about the time of day at the state house. And when Dr. Wicks invited me, and I looked at the list of cities, I looked at the list of projects, I looked at the heart of the people. I said, I'll be there. I don't know where it's at, but I'll be there. And why it's important is because in Louisville, Kentucky, don't believe everything you say. Not everybody's carrying a gun, not everybody's protesting. And the reason why I say that is because if we focus on stuff like this instead of the differences, we find that we're more alike than we are different.
Right.
And if we focus on how we're alike, then all the way from Ohio, all the way down, we'd have a waterfront that would be tourist attractions from around the world. And if you think about it, the greatest experiment, America, was created and designed by 50-something men in a basement hiding for their lives. And in this room, we have more than that. And we're only talking about a small part of America. But I believe that 50 years from now, 100 years from now, when they trace back the healing of the world, it could very well be because we got together. And we said we'll provide a place for families to be, for cities to convene, for companies to come, for Kentucky, Ohio, and Indiana to rise. We'll be back to this group. And that's why I'm here. Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody. It's a great introduction to cities along the Ohio River. And I've asked the panelists to think about 3 different themes. And the first one is, what are some examples from your city that can be shared with other cities in the Ohio River Way? Successes or failures, and what can we learn or build from that your city has experienced? And this can include anything from policies or activities to programs, investments, and so forth. You know, from my experience in Portsmouth, part of it was influenced in my involvement with the Burning Man Festival in Nevada. There we run the Burning Man Passport Office, and it encourages people to move about the festival or the event more than festival. It encourages people that might be shy to go into different spaces, and it just greatly improves interconnectivity. So I brought that idea back to Portsmouth, and one of the things we were trying to do was to get Shawnee State students off campus and to explore our city and see every different things that you can do. It's been a remarkable success, and it's something that I think we can do along the Ohio River Way, create different passports to encourage different activities, ranging from an earlier speaker, things to do with bourbon, things to do with history, and things to do with culture. It'd be something I'd love to collaborate with other cities on. and others in the room. We are still working on a Shop Portsmouth program, which borrows from an award-winning program in New Jersey. And essentially what it does is it encourages foot traffic to local businesses. For those that participate in the business or participate in the program, you go and you shop at a local business. That business gives you a 10% discount essentially from that sale. And that goes towards your property taxes. New Jersey does have very high property taxes. And so it was one of the ways of encouraging people to support local brick and mortar stores, while also part of the incentivizing of it was to lower property taxes. We're hoping to launch it in January, but it would be great if we connected different cities along the Ohio River Way and create an economic region so that people from Portsmouth could go to participating businesses in Covington or Louisville or Augusta, Cincinnati, Louisville, so forth. And in that, we can encourage people to think of our region, not just as a geographic one, but also as a shared economic one. We did, there's a lot of places in Ohio that's now established a DORA zone. This is a designated outdoor refreshment area. So people can move about in certain designated spaces and purchase designated cups from vendors, and you can walk about with essentially an open container of alcohol. We passed it in Portsmouth at a time when there was restrictions on restaurants and bars during coronavirus restrictions. And so one of the things it allowed for people to do was to still support our local bars and restaurants and do so in a way that they felt safe. And so this was this mutually agreeable, project, I guess, or program at first it's been wildly successful. And we've now actually just greatly expanded the overall space of the zone. We've added new vendors. And so it's been a great success. And it's allowed our downtown to have a little bit more energy, a little bit more action, I would say, in general. We've expanded the amount of days. It's now 7 days a week, and it's been great. Now, again, to think about when someone goes into the downtown of a city along the Ohio River, we think about what it is that welcomes them. And I remember that was part of our welcoming in New Richmond, and it was great. I mentioned one of the things that Portsmouth is experiencing, in my view, is this transition from a 20th century manufacturing city to more of what some are defining as more of a lifestyle city. And one of the things I think that we can learn from different cities is not just pure policy on different types of legislation and on different types of social behaviors and so forth, but also the actual transformation of physical spaces. And so that was something that I focused on over the last few years. Just to give a couple of examples, we had a disused park in our downtown. We transformed that into a $340,000 skate park, and it really breathed new energy into our downtown. We had this space that I would pass on the way to work to get to class, where it was just this disused empty lot. There was this broken down picnic table, a person usually sitting on the table smoking a cigarette. It wasn't the greatest of spaces as you drove by it. We transformed that into our city's first dog park, and it improved our overall, again, energy and activity in our downtown. It's much more aesthetically pleasing, but it was also us acknowledging, well, this is a space that had previously people would say we could put a factory there or something along those lines, but we've now kind of grown into the size of our city in a more comfortable way. And what we're now concentrating on is improving the quality of life for those that are currently residents there. So those are all things, in my view, that cities along the Ohio River have gone through changes that are similar to ours. Others are somewhat unique, but what we can do is provide some of the experiences that we've had as a city. We're about 18,300 currently. We had a peak of about 45,000 roughly 70 years ago. And so one of the things that we're doing is to come to terms with our new size, but also the new activities that would take place in a 21st century city. So from different activities that encourage, that have been successful in Portsmouth, in our own city, I think there's several examples that we could share with other cities along the Ohio River Way. And to do so, we're trying to develop more of a region that includes these different cities and kind of encourages people in each of these respective cities to travel to other places, explore these areas, just like we were trying to encourage students at Shawnee State University to move off the campus and explore the surrounding city. I think we can do quite a lot to encourage people in these different cities to explore the different areas along the Ohio River. So some of the things I would love to talk to people about throughout the day is things that I've mentioned and others in Portsmouth to talk about how I think they can be expanded to other cities on the Ohio River.
Mayor, I'm sorry, quick announcement. Does anybody have a Chrysler 300 New York Place? The car is running but nobody's in it in the garage. Just want to make sure you have gas or electricity in there. Anybody? Fine. Thank you.
Do you guys want to stay in this order? Would you like to stay in this order to go through? Is that what? You want to stay in this order? Do you want to go next? Is that work? Okay. Mayor Meyer next.
Well, again, Covington, and I'll speak a little bit really about more than Covington, because the south side of the river in the Cincinnati region consists of Ludlow, Covington, Newport, Bellevue, Dayton, and a little bit of Fort Thomas. So our efforts are really collective efforts. I want to follow up a little bit more because all of our cities have experienced the same thing, the period of decline and now the period of reinvestment. In Covington, the decline was so bad that in 1982, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development declared Covington the most distressed city in the United States. Worse than, pick one, East St. Louis, Newark, or you New Jersey folks. Covington was worse. And the simple reason for that is that because a lot of Covington was old, and old houses were bad houses. That was the attitude of the day. And as a result, a lot of cities tore down a lot of their old houses, their various courthouses, their city halls, their post offices, their public buildings, and went modern. Well, here we are today, and that which was old, that was bad in the 1970s and 80s is good. And we're seeing the complete reversal of the suburban flight back to the urban flight, where people like the urban environment, they like the architectural diversity, they like the walkability, they like the mixed use environment. So that's what's really driving our change, and we're appealing to new people to come back to the historic roots. And that is true for all of the cities along the south bank of the river in northern Kentucky. One of the things that we've done so very well in our region is collaboration. So we have an organization called South Bank, made up of all the cities that I mentioned, that have been working for several years on a project called Riverfront Commons. Thanks to funding from OKI and other sources, we're building a trail along the river from Dayton all the way to Ludlow. At least in the Covington side of it, we've invested about $12 million in what we call Covington Plaza, and an awful lot of the walkway along the river is completed. Where Newport has much of it completed. Charlie, I think Bellevue has a little bit of it, and more to come. Our investments includes a likely new bridge across the Licking River. Northern Kentucky is the land of two rivers, not just the Ohio, but also the Licking. And so we have a bridge across the Licking River that connects Covington and Newport. And we have funding for that. And the state is committed to include about 2 10-foot wide pedestrian bicycle lanes on either side of the traffic lanes for that new bridge. So that will be an important element of the Riverfront Commons project. Another thing that we have going on in Covington is the redevelopment of what used to be a massive Internal Revenue Service Center site. It is a paper processing facility, so it got wiped out, but it's 23 acres from 2nd Street to 4th Street, right in the heart of the city. And we are redeveloping it now. We're in that process now. And in that arena, we are restoring the urban grid. So what urban renewal took away, we are putting back in the 2020s, our street grid and whatnot, with one minor change. We're going to take a main street and run it not to the flood wall, but to the top of the flood wall, so that we can begin the process of trying to reconnect our residents and our neighborhoods to the river and try to reduce the impact of the flood wall, the levee, as a barrier to the connectivity between residents, visitors, our community and the Ohio River. And we think that's going to be a really significant addition and an important statement about our values about reconnecting with the river and making it more of an asset. Mayor?
Thank you. I should have told you all a while ago that I live about 200 feet from the river, but I never see it unless I drive up on the hill or cross a bridge. Hey, Commissioner King, welcome. I want to start by talking about relationships, whether it's with our commissioners or our representatives, our, in my case, my county judge, my city manager, and how important that can be for you when you're trying to get something accomplished. And those relationships, having conversation with people can make such a difference. The project I'm going to tell you about started with a conversation between the Maysville tourism director and a National Wildlife Refuge manager. And they talked about what our issues with not having access to the river, and he had some things that he wanted to connect to make it happen. And so he told us about the Eastern Land Federal Highway Division Federal Land Access Program, or FLAP. Y'all may have heard of it. And so, and the other thing is you have to invest in yourself. And so, the city manager, Matt Wallingford, told me that the riverfront was one of the things that he wanted to address. And so when I first became mayor, and when we found out about this grant, the ad district, Buffalo Trace, jumped in, our project manager jumped in, and we got the application in on time. And the city council had already budgeted $750,000 toward the riverfront improvements. But what this grant was able to do was to let us expand it and do it more quickly than we had planned. And with our 10% match of the FLAP, we just received $1,656,000 million. Those are going to improve the river side of the flood wall and the levee. We go from Limestone Landing, which is downtown. There's another opening in our flood wall at Hardeman Landing. And then it's about 1.5 miles down to the River Park dock area. The project will include new docks, boat slips, kayak and canoe launches, paved motorized path for maintenance and upgrades, and then a portable fuel trailer, because now folks have to go downriver to Ripley to get gas for boats. And so much needed. And so I want to really say thanks to Victor Elam, who's the refuge manager for the Ohio River Islands National Wildlife Refuge, and to that tourism director. Because of that relationship, having a discussion about what your needs are, and that partnership that made a difference for us. So our project team was the project manager for the city of Maysville, the Buffalo Trace ad, and the city manager. And also now we've always had a great relationship with our transportation. District 9 will be the administrator of this grant, so we'll be working with them. And we're truly excited about this opportunity. And I want to add one more thing about investing in yourself. And for some small towns, this might seem like a lot of money, but when you look at the impact of what the return on that investment is, and that is, let me find it here. We do we're part of a project that is called the Corps of Engineers Rehabilitation and Inspection Program. Do you all know about that? Somebody? Well, it cost us $50,000 a year. but we have, what do you think, Caroline, a mile of concrete flood wall, and then another mile or mile and a half of a levee. And so that investment, we do a certain standard of work every year to maintain that flood wall, like Spalding, where the concrete dissipates. And in return, they come and inspect, and they contribute. And 2 years ago, they did a $10 million project to improve and shore up our levee. And I was out on the river and went past it this summer, and it looks so nice from the river and really helped. And it's that's where a lot of this project is gonna feed along that work that they did. So there's a couple of ideas for you for some funding that will help you with your projects.
It's exciting to hear all these things that are going on. I'm going to get down to some nuts and bolts basics, I think, of some of the things that we've done. My predecessors and I've continued it for the last several years, developed a facade improvement grant program where we would do a matching grant up to $10,000 for any of the businesses downtown. And it caught on. Sometimes we had to actually go out and solicit those people and say, hey, you should take advantage of this. And they did. And activity always breeds activity. So when one started fixing something up, the others did. And after a while, it was a noticeable improvement. And I hear other mayors talk about investing in themselves. And that's what we did as well. We took our downtown streets, sidewalks, and improved them greatly by redoing them completely, putting period lighting in, putting brick crosswalks in. We were kind of gessoing the canvas to paint a new picture for our downtown. And as a result, we got ribbon cutting after ribbon cutting with small pop-up businesses. Like last quarter, I had 5, and I think I'm gonna have 5 more coming up this next quarter. And that's just amazing for a small town to see that type of growth. Now, one of the challenges on here was, what's the mistakes you made? We had the opportunity to secure some of our riverfront property, and we didn't. And I wish we would have, because if you own it, you can control it a lot better. You can get those grants and stuff to come in there. We're blessed that we have inland marinas, and we've managed to partner up with some of the private investors to come in. They're dredging out some of those that have become inactive over the years, and that's going to make them viable for the next 30 plus years. And it's all, you know, painstakingly done and moving and compounding on those things. US 50, as beautiful as it was, cut our city in half. So I've set out to try to reconnect it. And we just recently received from Indiana with the Next Level Trails program, almost $1 million grant to connect underneath US 50, CSX Railroad, so that we could have a bicycle connector running from one side to the other to make it possible for the kids, adults, everybody to move from one side of the city to the other safely. Because we just built a $3.5 million pool project, aquatic center, after, you know, a pool that had been there for 50 years and it started to fail. So there's just so many different things, even in a very small community, that are exciting and we get going. And all this, because of our proximity to the river, ties in with that to where you can eat in our restaurants. We've had probably 6 new restaurants open in the last 3 years. So we've developed kind of an entertainment community. You talked about the walking around entertainment community. So I'm putting more emphasis in that with the walkability from one restaurant to another. I want you to think Aurora first and then decide what you're going to do, because there's that many possibilities. So a few ideas.
So about 2 months ago, my husband took me on a cheap date. And where he took me was to the waterfront. And when we got there, and Louisville's waterfront, we heard music. So we followed the music. And it was Cuban music, Hispanic music. And when we got there, there were like 50 people doing that thing. I couldn't do it. I sat down with them. And we listened to the music and we watched them dance and we laughed. And we were more connected to that community than we've ever been before. Power of having a place for people to convene, for people to have fun, for people to get to know each other. That's what our waterfront provides. Now, you all know we've had a terrible 3 years, and we're going to need a lot of healing. And one of the things we did in the legislature is to allocate funds to continue building the rest of the waterfront, just a little bit, not the rest of it. We got a lot of waterfront. And they gave us enough money to do this much. But when we had the groundbreaking for that portion, 2 very important things. One, children were at the groundbreaking. Their parents were having them be invested in the project already. And I heard parents telling them how this was going to be so much better when it's done. And we'll get to come down here and play. And you get to do this, you'll ride your bike, because we had big pictures about how it was going to look. The second thing that happened at the groundbreaking was the city and the state government, we made a conscious decision that we always have money to do the waterfront parkway that way. But when it comes to other areas of town, we don't have money. Somehow disappears. So we made a conscious effort to work together and say, let's include everyone. Every family needs to thrive. Every family needs a place to be. And that's what that little portrait does. And it was a conglomerate of everybody that was going to use that park. And the park's not even done. And people are so proud. They're talking like they've been there already. It is
Sure you can't do that dance?
It's a morale builder. See, we are responsible, I think the mayor said it, for creating relationships where families can thrive, cities can thrive, states can thrive. And we don't keep our attention on it, it won't happen. We'll just go in our little cubby hole and watch Housewives of Atlanta. The last thing I'll say about our waterfront, I love our waterfront, is that about the Galt Hotel, many of you know the Galt Hotel, we just went to a celebration of their anniversary. And when they built the Galt Hotel, they were telling him he was a fool, don't waste your money, there's nothing but trash down there, it's industrial, all kinds of bad things. But he had a vision, and he built the thing. And now this is the only hotel in Louisville on the waterfront. You can't buy a piece of land down there now. That's possible for us. What if all the way from Ohio down through Kentucky, down through Indiana, or whichever way they might go? What this says, we were responsible for building relationships that endure. Like, I don't care that you like cheese on your bologna sandwich. I just care about getting this funded. Let's focus on the things that matter, that will move everybody forward instead of getting marred in what won't. And that's how we were able to get a lot of the funding done, because we decided to put aside our differences and focus on the greater thing, which is every Kentuckian thriving.
Thank you very much, panelists. I want to keep with our schedule. Brewster runs a very efficient ship, and believe it or not, a group of politicians have talked a little longer than I thought they would. One of the great times I've been in Louisville, it's been actually the first, so I was at Muhammad Ali's funeral, and there was one person that spoke for quite a while, and the MC had Mike afterwards, and he just dryly looked at the audience and he said, "Never give a teenager a telephone and never give a preacher a microphone." Right. These are great. What's great about it is there's so much going on in these cities, and it's great that the elected officials are just so proud of these achievements. So it's really great to hear all these different things, and it's very encouraging for me to think more about what we could be doing in Portsmouth. What I also had asked was, what can we do to better promote the Ohio and call attention to recreational, historical, and cultural entertainment assets? And what I might do is combine that with how can the Ohio River Way help each of these respective areas. And I'll ask for maybe one or two things and then we'll finish up by 11:25. But what I would say just from my own specific experience, I'll put it down to just back to Burning Man. I just recently wrote a grant for Burners Without Borders, and they're providing funding for canoes and equipment to go paddling on the Ohio River. I would have never done that if I had not done that trip with other people that are here today over the summer, and if it were not for the Ohio River Way. And so some of the things that they can do is provide guidance for events. One, how to help fund them and how to run them. You know, tell us where we can help get funding for things. How do you organize various events on the river? How can we coordinate or network with other cities to get that done? How can we get someone like Dr. David Wake to come down and instruct us on how to move these canoes through the water and so forth? So all of that, they can give us guidance, I think. They can provide marketing for those events, and they can provide networking to bring different people into these events. When we went along the Ohio River, I constantly have impacted this idea of collective effervescence, people getting together, having a great time together, as the last speaker was just saying, Representative Stevenson. That helps build an identity. And so rather than look at the river as something to be sad about or like scared of, we should look at it as something that we can all, that brings us together and that we can have fun, build this identity, I think, for our region. And this is a great place to enjoy a beautiful river and get together with people throughout the great cities along the Ohio River. So those are some of the things that I'm hoping that we can continue to develop through the Ohio River Way. There's so many different talented individuals that are part of it and that are connected to it. You can see around the room today. And that's what I'm hoping to do, like maybe in March of next year, start our first paddling event from Portsmouth to Shawnee State Park. I'm looking forward to that. Mayor Meyer, I'll pass it over to you then.
When I talked about the Riverfront Commons, I sort of downplayed it a little bit. It's much more than a trail. So in Covington, we call it Covington Plaza, which is a great festival venue, a concert venue, a walking venue, and like Maysville and like Portsmouth, we have these incredible murals along the floodwall that create an ambiance that even the residents, especially the residents, take advantage of when they're out walking or bicycling. So it creates that environment where you just want to be. It's just a whole lot of fun. I've been fortunate enough in my life. I've taken a few river cruises on the Danube and on the Nile and on the Rhine, and we don't have the density of population that those areas do, and nor do we have the age that those areas have, where you have a castle at every turn of the river and a little village or city or town, and every few hundred yards that are names that are people who live in our city now. But it's just an incredible environment, and the river trade in Europe and in other parts of the world is just exploding. We're beginning to see it now in the United States a little bit. I think the expense is really way up there, and in part that's because of the distance between our cities and the lack of density compared to the European communities in particular. But what we learned from that experience is that each of those towns, no matter how far apart they are, have these great walking tours and resources, convention and visitor resources, to help visitors to their community understand their history, understand their architecture, tell stories the way Pam does. You know, it really makes your community unique. So all of the cities, the towns along the river, have these kind of assets. We're all it's a couple of hundred years old. And we all have fascinating things, fascinating people, fascinating architecture, fascinating events. And we've got to become better storytellers so that we who take advantage of these life experiences can want to come to this river community and have the ability to learn through this type of tourism. So it's our hope that, you know, our Convention and Visitors Bureau, for example, will be and is working to help promote this sort of tourism opportunities in our region. And this is where the big picture collaboration, not the small intra-regional collaboration, comes into play. But the big collaboration comes into play because having this tour set up from Portsmouth to West Point creates such a different opportunity for us to attract a much larger number of people to see our river, our valleys, and our communities. So.
I think for Maysville and for myself, if Ohio River Valleyway keep sharing the ideas and maybe help us focus on things that we should be doing that we don't think about, and things we should avoid or pitfalls to watch out for on different projects or activities. And it's been real meaningful for me. I greeted the canoers as they came down the river, and when this project came about, adding the canoe slips and launches is kind of a big deal for us. And I had no idea that there were so many people in Maysville that were interested in that. So also I would encourage you to reach out to your citizens, find out what they're doing. You know, if they're going out of town, why are they going out of town? What are they doing at those destinations? And can you offer it where you live? And I think continuing to making those connections and sharing can inspire us. And if you have successes, please share that with the rest of us, or opportunities for funding to get the things done.
Thank you. I keep hearing this reaffirming and reoccurring theme of connectivity, and I think that's what we're all about. You know, that's why we gather in a room like this. Now we can share ideas and make those connections with one another and promote one another's activity. It's not just all about what I'm doing, it's about what's happening up and down the river and how I can share your successes as well as my own, that we can do that and get the collaboration together. And Ohio River Way, I think, is building that resource for us that we can advertise as a group. Every successful business has to have a good marketing plan. And I see this as being a way that we can market and tell our stories better than we're telling it. We have so much history in this region up and down the river. We have so many unique little stories, you know, like Paul Harvey used to say, and now for the rest of the story, because there's a lot of the rest of the stories here. And I want to hear yours, and other people want to hear your stories. They want to sit down. We feel lucky to be close to Cincinnati Market so that somebody said they can come and stay in a hotel or a B&B even. We're providing so many of those and make these little day trips out that are in close proximity. And that can happen from the major metropolitan cities all up and down the river, that we can go out. And it's easy to spend a week doing something. So I think events like this, the marketing that can happen through this, to be able to go on a website and say, what's happening in each little town? And I'll say, hey, go up and check this out in Covington. They've got this great event going on this weekend. So I think we can share all that with each other.
Yeah. I agree with the ideal. I imagine this big, beautiful cruise ship, if Ohio can handle a cruise ship, floating down, stopping, floating down, stopping, floating down, stopping, and getting off, passengers getting off and seeing what we have to offer. And where we have to stand is we have everything we need. Remember Pet Rocks? It was $1 million sailor, and all it was a rock that someone said was special. We have more than a rock, and it's all in our relationships. If you try to do it by yourself, it's not going to happen. If you connect with people inside the city, connect with people next to your city, then we can do something spectacular. In 10 years, maybe in 20, maybe 50 years, I'll learn how to do that dance, but I'll be on that cruise ship waving at each city as we go by, and they'll say, who's that old lady trying to do the two-step? And you'll say, I know, because we stood for it today, and we don't stand for it. It's not going to be good. We have everything we need. Stop looking for the answer. It's right.
Thank you very much, panelists. We can open up for a couple minutes. Is that all right, Bruce? For absolutely. Minutes? Yeah. Does anyone have any questions for panelists?
Mark Dury.
Yes.
How soon does that bridge project work connecting the pathway? How soon is that expected to be done?
We're working with our engineers and hopefully we'll have groundbreaking in 23.
The question was about the groundbreaking for the bridge. Yeah.
John, my question is, could somebody talk about the connection between the ecological health and human health and how the two are related?
He asked about how talking about ecological health and human health and how the two are related.
He's not a pinch hitter. I didn't plan him. But what I will say is this. Sometimes, because it's easy to do, we cut down trees because we can. But what we've learned all the way from Native Americans to now, that there is something about being one with nature that cures illnesses, gives you peace of mind, heals the generational gap between the young and the old. All of a sudden you're on the waterfront loving on each other instead of fussing about the phone. There is a healing nature that we often overlook because we can't count it. And if you look at your, don't believe go short lady from Louisville, look at your own experience about what calms you, what brings you peace, what has you dream big. It is usually a moment when you're with nature.
And I think that today more people see that, and COVID kind of drove us to that as well when we were, home, and nature was our savior because we could get out and walk in that, and I really see that in the economic arena for us. They really are looking for quality of life, and our cities are the cities that can offer that to people.
It seems like there's a common theme that I've been hearing about how to tell stories in your cities, how to package what we know about these historic areas or these geologic area or archaeological areas. And if we could find out a way, however a way to come up with a consulting practice that could use the new technology with apps. I mean, the apps are so good at how you can do a self-guided tour and have a rich collection of photography and explanations that could be really curated by the user. Airbnb started a company to hook you with storytellers in the city you're staying. So you can have storytellers from Maysville meet somebody when they come in from Cincinnati. They give a tour of the first winery in the Midwest of the world. I mean, the wineries got started there a long time ago. So anyway, we got to figure out how to come up with a model and replicate the model because everybody needs the same thing. So everybody's just not reinventing everything. We just come up with a consulting firm, get the museums tied in, the universities, and come up with a slick way to package all these things in a way that it's legible for self-guided tours or bus tours or whatever. Okay.
And I don't know if you're seeing it in your cities, but we're seeing a huge amount of private investment in historic preservation, in housing, in the retail shops. Last year, or in 2021, we had 30 ribbon cuttings in Maysville. And that was all private investment. So it's not only the cities, but you have to get your citizens involved and committed and to helping. And we also did a matching for downtown Main Street. My Main Street coordinator is here with me today too. She did matching funds to promote preservation of those historic downtown buildings. And then we're also doing it for homes. It's not just our downtown, but our whole community. And I think that's what's really appealing to folks from outside.
We likewise spread ours out too. After so many years, you get a large concentration of projects done downtown, and we've taken it citywide as well. So that's worked well for us. And you mentioned Main Street, and that's the key. We have a very active Main Street program, and our director seems to have something going every weekend. And that, like I said before, activity breeds activity. So it's not like you have to do a whole bunch of things, but come up with some quality events. Like we have one of the oldest street fairs every fall. And that's a large thing that we can attract a lot of people into town. So, and again, I say sharing those ideas. Who's got what each weekend up and down the river? So that'll help tremendously.
Just to speak to the idea about apps, in my area, my colleague Drew Fife created the Scioto Historical app. And so it allows you, those that use the app, to go to different spaces throughout Scioto County of historical importance. So one of the things it's doing is documenting those places, but also meeting students where they're at, or young people where they're at, that they use apps for just about everything. And so he realized, well, we could use that for talking about our area's history. And I think we can do that too with the areas throughout the Ohio River. There's a hand.
Hi, good morning. Thank you all for being here and speaking as representatives of our cities and towns around here. One question I have as a resident of Dayton, Kentucky, I'm very curious about the Riverfront Commons Trail and what the process and strategy is for local governments to work together to complete and finish that trail. And I'm also curious how organizations like Tri-State Trails and Ohio Riverway can get involved in that conversation.
That's a pretty specific question to the South Bank. The Riverfront Commons has been a project of South Bank, which is an organization of all those river cities. And really, it's been up to each city to work with South Bank for specific components of the expansion of the trail in their community. So your real first place to start is with Mayor Baker and Jay Fawcett, your city administrator. In Dayton, there's been an incredible amount of investment and development going on. So, you know, this is, you have to fit the trailway into what else is going on in the community. And the other thing is the South Bank is a community or organization that is actually led by business leaders that has government as members of it. And so engaging with South Bank through Tri-State Trails and organizations like that would be appropriate and helpful towards promoting and spreading the message. You got to spread the gospel.
Other questions?
I just have one more question for all of you, and that is, how important is it for regular citizens to talk to legislators about what they want to do? And we don't have any federal legislators here, but do you think they listen?
Well, as far as citizens, I think that's extremely important because no one person knows all the answers or knows all the issues. And one of the things that I started, it's a little video clip called Minute with the Mayor. When I first started, I realized that a lot of people didn't know how our city government works. And we are a city manager type of government. There's not that many cities in Kentucky that have that. And so about every week or so, I do a little educational piece. And one of the things, I did one this week on boards and commissions. Our little town has 17 boards and commissions. And that really gets, and I'm a big believer in rotation after 2 terms. And so that helps people in your community learn about what you do or what the possibilities are, but listening to them. And Commissioner King, I don't know about the feds, but I know that the state folks listen to you.
Okay. So I served 27 years in the Air Force and retired as a colonel. And after that, I came back home to Kentucky because I wanted to serve in my state. And this is what I believe in, the promise of America, that this government is only for the people, by the people, to serve the people. And if I'm not listening, now I might zone out sometimes, but if I'm not listening, I don't know what you want.
and I don't know everything. My job is not to put on you what I believe. Like I love cake, and if I could have it every day, I'd have y'all eat cake every day too. But this is not my job. So I sit up in Frankfurt and I have meetings, outbound meetings. I get 5,000 emails a week doing session. And my job is to talk to people. And sometimes it's hard because, you know, people can be sparking people. But if I am going to move Kentucky and America towards the promise, then it has to be for the people.
Yeah, for the Louisville, Kentucky Journal, and thank you all for engaging with us. Thank you all to the panelists for taking time out of your busy schedules to come here, and we'll move it on to the next part of the day.
All right, let's give it up for this wonderful thing. Thank you, everybody. You guys are wonderful. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. Okay, great. Okay, folks, we're running a little bit behind time. I'm sorry, but if you need to use the facilities right outside the door, please take advantage of this opportunity to do so. Rather than breaking, because it'll take you 20 minutes.